Hi, students, and welcome back to another episode of our several lecture series in our subject investment portfolio management. But before that, let's just make a quick recap of what we have learned and discussed so far in our previous videos. And by now, you should be able to understand and differentiate the various financial markets, various financial securities and real assets, no, in assets in general. You should understand the presence of risk, no, the presence of reward because of this risk, no, yung tinatawag nating risk-return trade-off, and of course, the importance of investments in general. Kasi these fundamental theories that you have learned from the previous videos will be applied in our next topic, which is portfolio planning and construction. So you would further appreciate and understand this next topic if you fully understood the previous video. So if hindi nyo pa 100% naiintindihan yung ating previous topic, please do not hesitate to replay the videos and ulit-ulitin natin hanggang sa magets talaga natin ng tuluyan. Okay, so before we proceed to our discussion proper, let me just read to you this presentation outline, or kumbaga this is gonna be the direction of our lecture video for this moment or for today. Okay, so first we're going to define what portfolio management is all about. The portfolio management process, ito yung pinaka backbone ng ating discussion for today, no? The entire rigorous process of portfolio management. And in that process, we are going to discuss the types of investors and risk characteristics. And also, under the portfolio management process, pag-uusapan din natin yung tinatawag nating asset selection and allocation. And last would be the types of mutual funds and pooled investment. So, yung mutual funds ay isa lamang dun sa napakaraming na-discuss natin dun sa types of investment vehicles, right? So, mutual funds are pooled investments, alright? So, pag-uusapan natin ng mas detailed yung usapin na yan dito sa video lecture na ito. Now, let's proceed with our next slide, which defines portfolio management. But before I proceed with the description in front of you right now, let me just ask you, what comes into your mind when you hear the word portfolio? I'm sure this is not the first time you've heard of the word portfolio, but siguro hindi nyo siya ganun pinapansin before. Okay. So if you are an artist, whether you are a painter, a photographer, or gumagawa ka ng sculpture, gumagawa ka ng furniture, so yung mga clients mo would always look for your portfolio. Okay? So, aside from that, kahit hindi naman artist, let's just say, isa kang musician, isa kang architect, you are, ano pa ba? A professional model. Okay, lahat ng yun may mga portfolio. So, ano ba yan? It's a collection of something. Alright? Diyan nakapaloob lahat ng mga, let's just say, if you are an artist, kasi yung mga gawa mo is considered your asset. Okay, so in this case, when we say investment portfolio, it's a collection of investments. Okay, it's an organized collection of investments. Now, let's proceed to the description. The first line there that you can see is, it's an art and a science. Sa tingin nyo, bakit kaya siya tinawag na art? At bakit siya tinawag na science? Okay. If I would be asking an artist to paint my face, to make a portrait of me, okay, that portrait would not have the same portrait of anybody else, no? Yung distance ng kilay ko sa aking mata, yung aking ilong, yung aking bibig. It's not gonna be a duplicate of anybody else's portrait. It's just gonna be mine. If an architect will ask me kung magpapatayo ako ng bahay, my favorite color, my personality, my character will show into the architect's final masterpiece based on how this architect interviewed me. So meaning, lumalabas yung lumalabas yung character ko, lumalabas yung individuality, yung uniqueness ko through this masterpiece. So same goes with your investment portfolio. The fund manager or the portfolio manager would actually mirror or reflect your personality through your investments. So therefore, it's unique. It's just yours. It's customized. That's why it's called an art. Okay? Because it mirrors who you are as a person, as an individual. Now, it's called the science simply because, the word management is already a cycle. It's a process. Now, in science, there is experimentation, there is trial and error, there is research, there is decision based on facts, based on mathematics, no? They're based on statistics. So that's why it's called science. There is a process there is a process component injected inside this process. Okay? Kaya siya tinawag na art and science, no? Ngayon mo lang marirealize, wow, oo nga, no? Akala mo pag finance, it's purely mathematical and computational. No, it's actually a mixture of everything, no? From behavioral finance to economics, marketing, entrepreneurship, accounting. It's a mixture of everything. Okay, that's why our course is really a beautiful subject. It's a culmination of all subjects in the business administration department. Now, if you can really truly grasp and understand our course, you would really appreciate it. Okay, next is a collection of strategic processes and decisions. Okay, pag ikaw ay manager, regardless of what kind of organization you are managing, the manager is actually the one who is responsible for decision making. And so, in portfolio management, wala pong pinagkaiba yun. Okay? The reason why it's called strategic, it's because it's futuristic. So, anything that is futuristic is called strategic. And so, these processes and decisions, hindi pa nangyari to. They are all future tense. And it's just gonna happen in the future because you are making a blueprint of a person's future. O, diba? Napakaganda. It's a collection of a person's future, and you are making that future based on what this person is now. That's why you're going to interview that person. You're going to ask, ano ba yung goals mo sa life? Ano gusto mong ma-achieve? Ano ba yung purpose kung bakit ka nagsiset up ng investment mo? So, in the future, how do you see your assets grow at what rate or what percent, or do you see yourself investing in this kind of product in the future? Ito ba ay swak ba to sa character mo? So it's something like that. You are creating a future based on what a person is now. Ang galing, ano? Ang ganda. And then maximization of return at a given risk. Okay. Ito very tricky tong itong statement na to, ano. How do you maximize a return at a given risk? Okay. So let's just say you are investing in bonds. How do you maximize the return of a bond? Okay. How do you maximize a return of a bond versus a return of a stock? Okay? So, hindi pare-parehas yung level of risk ng mga investments. We know that by now. But as a fund manager, as a portfolio manager, how do you make sure you maximize the return from those risks? And that would be based on the strategic processes that we have mentioned a while ago. Again, it is also based on the risk characteristics of your client. No, mamaya pag-uusapan natin ano ba yung risk profile. Kasi hanggat hindi mo alam yung risk na kayang i-tolerate ng client mo, you cannot maximize a given return. Okay? Kaya itong ating subject is really focused on another person's character, not on the character of the fund manager but on the character of the client. And then ito na-mention ko na kanina, no? Goals, wants and needs. Paano ba nakikita yung future mo? So, we would want to know how do we make sure we meet the specific goals for the benefit of the investors. So, let's just say the specific goal of your investor is to purchase a rest home after 30 years. So, if the rest home is valued at 2 million, so how do we make sure the investment right now will reach 3 million in the future? Okay? So it's very specific. It's kumbaga for some, no, you would say educational plan for my children. For some, I want my own restaurant. For some, I would like to have a dream wedding. So these are specific goals that you would have to make sure, given the capacity of the investor, how do you make sure we achieve that targeted goal, diba? And make sure it has to be realistic, right? Next is you have to select the best investment vehicle. Hindi pwedeng sasabihin mong we have to reach this 1 million goal after 3 years or 5 years, given na kung yung investment vehicle mo ay treasury bonds lang. You cannot do that. So, ibig sabihin, hindi nagmamatch yung goal dun sa vehicle. So, you have to make sure nagmamatch yung capacity ng investor, nagmamatch yung time horizon, nagmamatch yung kanyang return, yung kanyang risk characteristic, and then of course yung goal. So, yan yung mga kailangan i-identify at i-research mabuti ng isang fund manager before siya mag-come up with the strategic decision for the particular client or investor. And lastly, this would be the end product of this would be actually ito yung end product ng ating subject, no, makapag-come up ng strategic asset allocation. Kung ano man yung asset allocation, we would be learning that in a while, no. And the second slide, no. Second slide for this one is purpose na pala. So that's the last definition for portfolio management. So doon pa lang, no, ang ganda na. Everything that is written here on the definition of portfolio management is very selfless, simply because, you know, it answers somebody else's dreams. That alone makes this subject so beautiful that when you come to think of it, you know, your knowledge on or your expertise when it comes to these matters will make a person's dream come true in the future, given na ma-manage mo nga siya ng tama. Okay? Next is the purpose. The purpose of portfolio management is to make the most appropriate plan. Depending on the income, that's what I said kanina, capacity, the risk tolerance, objectives, and expectations, or the goals. Parang nasabi ko na lahat to kanina, no? Balance investor objectives and available investment opportunities. And reduce risk for optimal return. Ito yung maximization of return at a given risk. So, it depends on the risk appetite of the investor. And then continuous planning to evaluation process. That's why it's called management. That's why it's called the science, because it's a continuous planning to evaluation process. And lastly, ito yung sinabi ko kanina, it's a customized investment solution. It's just yours. Sa'yo lang yan. It's a copy, it's a mirror of who you are as a person, at hindi siya pwedeng i-duplicate or i-recycle coming from other investors na katulad mo. So, dapat yung portfolio mo is just yours and yours alone. Now let's move on to the investment management process. So just like any other management topic or subject, the investment portfolio management process also begins with planning. Okay? So, kung makikita nyo, ito na yung pinaka-proseso na pag-uusapan natin. Although it's very short and brief, ay naku, napakahabang proseso po nitong investment portfolio management. It just looks simple from the outside, but on the inside, it's very chaotic. You know? So, planning, execution, and then feedback. So, these are the major investment portfolio management process. Now, let's begin with planning. Okay. So, under the planning stage, we have to identify all of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This seven ano tawag dito? They're like di man stages. Ano ba tawag dito? You have to accomplish all of these factors. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, under planning stage, lahat nitong 7 na ito, tama ba ako? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, all of the 7 factors should be addressed by the fund manager. Okay, the first thing that you have to do is to investigate or to research on the investor's risk tolerance. Okay? And then after that, the return objectives. When we say return objectives, at what percent, no, yung yield na hinahanap mo for a particular portfolio or fund. Okay? Are you expecting 8% return? Are you expecting 10% return at the end of 5 years? So, things like that. And then time horizon, you have to accomplish this because most of the funds or, kumbaga, like I said, it should be measurable, it should be attainable, time-bound, yung acronym na SMART, na specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and then time-bound. So, kasama dun yung time horizon. So, how many years are you planning to hold on to your investment before you finally liquidate them? Okay? Next is your tax exposure. Okay, sorry. There are investments that they have high tax percentage, such as when you purchase real estate, you are subject to yearly tax. Okay, yung tinatawag nating land tax. Pag naman nagbenta ka ng lupa, meron ka ring babayarang capital gains tax. So same din sa stock, you are also subject to capital gains tax once you sell your stocks. So any property under under the supervision of the SEC, under the supervision of kumbaga sa real estate, they are all subject to tax. So it's up to you as an investor kung anong klase ng investments ba ang okay sa'yo na kapag ka dinispose mo na, napakataas or mababa lang yung tax exposure. Of course, if you are an investor, gusto mo mababa lang yung tax exposure mo. Let's just say, for example, for bonds, no? Mababa lang yung tax exposure, but then again, the return is also small. Okay? And then the liquidity needs, ibig sabihin, these are, how do I say this? There are certain people na hindi kaya na hindi humawak ng cash ng sobrang tagal. Okay? Ibig sabihin, how many years would you want your investment na nandyan lang, hindi mo ginagalaw? Ibig sabihin, wala ka bang paggagamitan? So, if you're going to purchase a car or you're going to purchase a house or you're going to send your children to school, napakataas ng liquidity needs mo. But if, like for example, you are just starting your career at 24, wala ka pang planong masyadong maggastos-gastos until you reach the age of 32. So you have a lot of time na hindi mo gagalawin yung pera mo, so it's okay to be exposed to investments. Okay? So when we say liquidity needs, baka kasi hindi nagma-match yung needs mo at the moment dun sa investment or dun sa uh, investment objectives mo. So you have to make sure as a fund manager you would be addressing these liquidity needs. And then income needs, there is a difference between gains and income. Okay? Kasi kapag ka gains or growth, you're just letting your investment grow over time in terms of value. But if we're talking of income needs, you would want additional income coming from your investment. So, ang goal mo ay hindi naman talaga growth, kundi additional income or yung tinatawag nating passive source of income. So, in this case, you would be needing investments with higher uh, income generating characteristics. Like for example, if i-compare natin yung preferred stock sa common stock, yung common stock is more on growth while preferred stock is more on income needs. Okay? So ibig sabihin yung kakayahang mag-generate ng cash on a yearly or annual basis. Like for example, bonds, if you're going to invest in bonds, you would receive interest payments yearly. So kung ganun yung case, if you know that your client has high income needs, you would be creating a portfolio that consists more of bonds or fixed income rather than growth investments. Okay? And then we have unique circumstances. So if you are very much a conservative investor that gusto mo yung pera mo is mapupunta lamang sa mga companies na alam mong sinusuportahan ng values mo, ng principles mo in life, then these are examples of unique circumstances. Yung mga kailangan nagaano lang, kumbaga it follows your religious and cultural beliefs. Kung ayaw mo nung mga companies into gaming and casinos o di kaya naman yung mga may-ari ng kumpanya ay kumbaga hindi umaakma sa personality mo, these are all unique circumstances that the fund manager needs to know. Okay? So yun ang laman nitong ating planning stage. Tong 7 factors na kailangan ma-research ng tama ng ating mga fund managers. Okay, when you sign up with a portfolio manager, okay, kailangan kang gumawa or kailangan mag-produce nitong fund manager or portfolio manager yung tinatawag nating investment policy statement. So, under the investment policy statement, dito nakapasok lahat ng mga naka-enumerate dito sa ating planning stage. So, dyan makikita nung fund manager yung 7 nakasaad dito under sa planning stage natin. So, we call that the investment policy statement. So, it details the investor's objectives and constraints. Okay. So, for your next activity, okay, this is going to be an individual activity. You will be asking, again, 2 employees who are already 5 years employed or self-employed. Okay? At ipapasagot nyo itong risk profile questionnaire sa kanila. But I will be instructing more of your next activity. This time, it's an individual activity. Later, siguro ipopost ko na lang. But definitely, your next activity would be, you would be asking someone to to answer this risk profile questionnaire. So, since ipapasagot nyo ito sa kanila, might as well answer it first. Ay, hindi pala 2 employees, only 1 because you're going to answer it yourself and then you're going to interview again another employee who is 5 years na pong employed. Yun yung ating grounds for your next respondent. Okay? So, let's look into this risk profile questionnaire. Although there are a lot of questionnaires that which are available online and na ginagamit din ng iba't ibang mga companies, this one I selected because it's the easiest to comprehend. Okay? So, itong risk profile is described as the amount of risk an investor is willing to accept is known as their risk profile. So, since this is the first step under the planning stage, no, marapat lamang na at this point in your college life as a financial management student, malaman nyo na rin yung risk profile ninyo as an individual. Although sinasabi nila, no, as a person grows old, nag-iiba yung risk appetite niya. When you are young, mas aggressive ka, and as you grow old, nagiging mas conservative ka sa mga decisions mo in life. So, ang risk profile, hindi po yan constant. Okay? Yan po ay nagbabago-bago over time. So, let me just clarify that. Okay, so assessing a person's tolerance to investment risk is a key aspect of portfolio construction and is critical to determining appropriate asset allocation, the recommended investments, and expected returns. So, in short, itong risk profile is a key. Isa siyang susi para mabuo natin yung portfolio ng isang investor. Actually, kung titignan mo, andyan na nga yung definition ng portfolio management eh. So, it's a key. Yan yung initial step o yan ang unang-unang kailangan mong gawin for you to have a basis on the strategic decisions that you will come up to for the investor's portfolio. Okay? Again, you would have to perform this questionnaire for you to determine the asset allocation, recommended investment, and expected returns. Okay. So, as you can see here, there is, I inserted a picture of clocks. Sabi ko kanina, an individual risk profile often changes over time for various reasons. So, kung ang reason na yan is because habang tumatanda tayo, nag-change yung ating priorities. Ngayon, nag-aaral kayo in the next few years. Probably, ang unang goal nyo is mabilan ng sariling bahay yung magulang ninyo instead of renting. Probably buy your own car or your own vehicle. Mag-purchase ng sarili mong bahay, ikakasal ka, kakaroon ng anak, and then so on and so forth. And then, of course, retirement. So, maraming reason. Kaya, habang bata pa kayo, decide on early what you would want to achieve in the next 5 or 10 years, 15 years to 20 years. So, ayan. Additionally, it is normal to have different risk profiles for your investment horizon. So, please take note of that. Now, let's, for question 1, it answers yung liquidity requirements. Like I said kanina, if you are a person with high needs of liquidity in the next 6 months or in the first year, yan yung mga dapat mong i-address sa iyong fund manager, which you should also be honest about. The next question is about experience. Since kayo ay mga estudyante pa lang, for sure wala pa kayong investment experience. But for some people who are already working, like I said, kung ang minimum natin is 5 years, you would want to know kung in that span, meron na ba silang investment experience at magkaiba po ang savings sa investment. Please take note of that. Magkaiba po yung meron ka lang bank account sa ikaw talaga ay nag-i-invest. Third is your attitude towards risk. So, how comfortable are you putting your initial investment at risk to achieve a higher level of return? So, dito mo makikita kung gaano ba ka-conservative or ka-aggressive ang isang tao when it comes to returns and losses. The next question would be your objectives. So, dito mo makikita kung yung tao ba is more on growth, more on income, or more on safeguarding their investment. So, dito makikita ano ba yung pinaka-objective mo, bakit gusto mong mag-invest. And the next is about inflation. Okay. Actually, yung inflation kasi mas pag-uusapan natin dun sa rates of return topic. But, in short kasi ang inflation, to make it short, to make it brief, the presence of inflation actually minimizes the return of investment. So the higher the inflation rate is, no, the lower the return of your investment becomes. So napakalaking effect talaga ng inflation when it comes to interest rates. Not only in bonds, but definitely dun sa entire investment environment. So kapag ka unstable ang inflation ng isang bansa, alam mo rin na medyo hesitant din yung mga investors na mag-invest sa isang particular economy. So if you would want to research more about on inflation, just research it on Google so that you could understand what inflation and how it affects investments. Okay? Next is taxation. Ito na nasabi ko na kanina, no, there are really investments that are very sensitive to tax, or kumbaga hindi naman sensitive. What I should say would be mas malaki yung tinatax as compared to other investments. So of course, kung ikaw yung magi-invest, gusto mo dun ka lang sa lesser tax exposure. But then again, syempre kapag lesser yung tax exposure, yung return is also mas bababa. Kasi you would want your return to cover your tax expenses. And of course, kapag mas mataas yung return, mas mataas yung risk. Okay? Next, your attitude to capital loss. So this time, ito yung tinatawag nating kaya mo bang matulog sa gabi knowing that you have investments that can lose up to, for example, ito nga 20% in any year. So, ibig sabihin, kung hindi mo kayang maatim na pwede kang mawalan ng 20% sa yung investment in a year, nako, you would rather go for conservative investments or defensive investments rather than pursue growth investing o di kaya naman yung aggressive investing, ano? So, hindi tayo magiging pare-parehas ng sagot dyan. Okay? Next is your preferences. Okay. We're talking of dito na kasi dito magiging basis ng asset allocation natin, ano? Because since we're talking of asset allocation, we are talking of yung preference mo when it comes to volatility. Okay? Kasi pag sinabi mong i-expose mo yung investment mo in 5 years or in 10 years, volatility means yung pabago-bago ng prices ng assets over time. So if you are the type of person who doesn't want too much changes in the value of your investment, of course, ibig sabihin, conservative. But if it's okay with you na nagkakaroon ng changes, then it's, alam naman natin, if the, mas risky ang isang investment, the higher its return would be. Okay? So, you would be answering investment preferences. Next would be attitude to gearing. Gearing simply means leverage or sa madaling salita, utang. So, would you want to borrow for the sake of investing? But ako, personally, I wouldn't do that because it's high risk. But with what's happening in the stock market, it's just normal for some traders, okay? Magkaiba po ang trader sa investor kasi when we say trader, you are buying and selling stocks in a short period of time. But if you are an investor or you are investing, you are keeping those assets with you for a longer period of time and you do not have any intentions of selling those assets in a short period of time. Okay? So, please keep that in mind. I would know kung naintindihan mo tong video na to pag naalala mo itong sinabi ko na to, ha? Magkaiba ang trading sa investing. So, anyway, some traders would really prefer to borrow money for the sake of investing. And it happened just this month, no, yung very controversial na GameStop stocks. Alright? So, what happens is, kumbaga, nangungutang yung investor sa broker, and then kapag tumaas na yung value ng stock, saka mo babayaran yung broker, but this time, meron na siyang kumita ka, and then again, kumita din naman yung broker through those leveraging. But anyway, with question 9, how comfortable are you with the thought of mangungutang ka para mag-invest? But then again, sabi ko nga, personally, I wouldn't really do that because hindi pa ganun ka-aggressive or hindi pa ganun kalakas ang loob ko when it comes to stock leveraging. Okay? Okay, so that's it. We only have 9 questions to answer. So make sure you answer this with adding all of the points that you're seeing on your screen. So ang gagawin nyo lang, i-add nyo lang yung points sa bawat question. Ayan. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. So okay. For the test results, ayan. As we will be discussing the test results simultaneously, we're going to discuss the different investor types and characteristics. Okay. So, ayan na nga. Like I said, we are going to simultaneously talk about the types of investor and risk characteristics. So, we are hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. Okay. So, generally, we have 3 basic types of investors. We have the conservative, moderate, and aggressive. But using this risk profile questionnaire, we will be arriving with, I think, 5. Tama ba ko? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 6 pala. But, kumbaga, these are just, mas detailed lang na clustering or, kumbaga, pagkaka-define. Okay? So, we have 3 major types of investors, but for this risk profile questionnaire, we are going to arrive with 6. Okay? So, simulan na natin. If your score was between 8 to 11, okay, you are a defensive investor. Okay. What I would want to highlight with this definition is that we have, kumbaga, a pro forma allocation here. Okay? This is already the allocation that we're trying to, that we were talking about since the beginning of this video. So as you can see here, 90% income and 10% in growth assets. No, napakalaking percentage. Ito na yung sinasabi nating allocation. You would be putting up 90% of your investment in income and 10% in growth. So, defensive. The reason why it's defensive is because I don't want to have any losses. Ayoko magkaroon ng loss. Just the thought of it, allergic na ako. That's why 90% is in income. And when we say income, we're talking of fixed income securities. Therefore, we're talking of bonds. So, if you are a defensive investor, most of your investments will be invested on fixed income, and only 10%, which is very minimal lang, in growth assets. And so when we say growth assets, we're pertaining to securities like stocks, So that would be for defensive. That's gonna be the first type of investor. Now we go to conservative. So si conservative, parang one notch higher lang siya to defensive. So kapag conservative ka, yes, safe ka pa rin pagdating sa mga investment decisions mo, but still I can accommodate a little bit of risk. Yes, conservative ka, yes, mindful ka sa losses, but I can accommodate just a little bit of loss. That's why, sa kanyang allocation, ito ay lang suggested, but definitely, it's not gonna be the basis of, kumbaga, end all and be all ng decision mo. This is just a suggested allocation. So 70% would go to income assets and 30% would go to growth assets. Okay, kung kanina ay 90%, this time 70% goes to income assets and then 30% goes to growth assets. Next is yung ating tinatawag na moderate, nasa gitna lang. Okay? Hindi ka na ganun kaingat sa losses and you could accommodate more risk pero katamtaman lang, not so much. Kumbaga, the reason kung bakit 60% pa rin siya is because in case magkaroon ng losses yung sorry. The reason kung bakit at least actually pag moderate pwede dito 50-50 eh. Technically, no, 50-50. But for moderate, we can say na pwede mo nang i-expand to 60% yung growth assets mo. But, yun nga. Well, pag sinabi kasi natin nasa gitna, it's 50-50. Okay? So, yung probable losses mo dun sa 60% in growth assets can be covered by your 40% income. Okay? So, pwede na rin. Saktong-sakto. Kumbaga, ito yung pinaka-ideal lang. Moderate. Okay? Next is we have the growth. Ito na. When we say growth, you are investing most of your assets into growth assets or in stocks or medyo high risk na ng konti na investments. And then, kumonti na yung income portion mo which only is 20%. And then second to the last, I should say, aggressive 100% in growth assets. Kumbaga, ayaw mo na ng easy investments because you are already a pro investor, highly experienced investor. You'd go for all in 100% growth assets because you would rather focus on the return rather than the losses. Kasi nga, higher return, higher risk, di ba? So, all in, kumbaga. So, ang pinagkaiba ng aggressive dito sa high alpha, ito na yung tinatawag nating, you don't just settle for the, how do I, kumbaga ito, sobrang experienced na investor na willing na siya mag-invest on a global scale. Okay? So, hindi na lang siya pang domestic investment, willing na siyang maghanap ng opportunities abroad. And so, habang lumalayo ka sa iyong comfort zone, di ba? If you are, before, domestic lang ang investments mo, you can now go for the, kumbaga, the road less traveled. No? Sabi nga dito, no, high alpha investors are prepared to accept negative returns approximately 1 year or even in 3 years. Ibig sabihin, a high alpha approach is usually appropriate for a term of investment of more than 7 years. Grabe, no? Are you willing to have that kind of time horizon na even in 7 years, kahit mag-loss pa ako within 3 years, basta after 7 years, mabawi din yung loss, it's okay. It's fine with me. Oh, grabe yun. So, kung ganun ka-risky yung investment, asahan mo na ganun din naman kataas yung possibility na napakataas, more than 200% yung return na makuha mo. Just imagine in the case of Tesla, when Elon Musk was in the bridge of bankruptcy, yun eh. You invested so much in Tesla in the first 3 years nung nag-IPO siya, and then on the 4th year, biglang pumalpak. Kala mo magsasara na, but then you did not pull out your investment. You continued to trust the leadership of Elon Musk, and then on its 6th year, on its 7th year, biglang bumulusok yung value ng stock. And so, ikaw yung panalo. So, ibig sabihin, you are a high alpha investor if you're willing to sacrifice 2 years of losses for the sake of the 3rd year of return. Ganon ka-aggressive yung mga tinatawag nating mga venture capitalist, ano? So, ito yung papasagot natin sa inyong i-interviewin, and make sure you also answer this questionnaire yourself so that by now, alam mo na kung anong klaseng investor ka ba in the making. Alright? Alright, so after everything that was said on the different types of investors, we can now look at the strategic asset allocation that we were talking about while I was discussing these different types of investors, ano. So in a nutshell, we can look at this table, ano. So this is the column for the defensive investor, conservative, moderate, growth, aggressive, and then high alpha. So kung titignan niyo yung defensive, ano, this is just, again, a proposed strategic asset allocation for the different variations of investors. Ano, these are just proposed. Again, hindi siya fixed. This is just a guide or a template. Okay. So, from the word itself, allocate, paano mo hahati-hatiin? Yun lang naman ang ibig sabihin ng allocation eh. The reason why it's called strategic because it's futuristic. And so, when we say allocation, portion. So, itong nakikita nyo is paghahati-hati or pagpo-portion-portion ng iba't ibang investment asset. Kasi different asset, ano to eh, variations of assets. Okay? So, ito yung pagkakahati-hati. Pansinin nyo dito sa defensive. Okay? 90% is more on income, 10% on growth. Kaya kung titingnan mo, the cash is 30%, fixed interest or fixed income securities is 60%, and then under, dun sa kanyang growth investments, meron siyang domestic stocks. Actually, kung akong tatanungin, hindi ko nakakayaning magkaroon ng international shares dito. But since yung aking source comes from the CFA reviewer, so galing po ito sa CFA reviewer, kaya siya merong international shares. But technically, if you are a defensive, conservative, moderate investor, you wouldn't want to invest so much on international shares. So, mag-focus ka muna sa domestic shares. But then again, this is just a template. And then we also have property or infrastructure, or we call the real assets, no? 2%. So, a total of 100%. Right? So, wag nyo nang itanong bakit 100%. Kasi, kailangan talaga mag-come up ka with a 100%. Okay? That's the totality of your investment. So, if you have a 1 million investment, or if you have 500,000 investment, how are you going to allocate that into portions of different assets? And then sa conservative, no, nag-iba lang dun sa bigat, dun sa weight na tinatawag natin. Same pa rin sa cash, 30%, pero bumaba yung sa fixed interest kasi lumaki yung dun sa growth assets. Okay? 15% was allotted sa fixed asset, and then 5% was allotted to real estate. And then for moderate, so bumababa yung ating income, tumataas yung ating growth stocks. Okay? So growth stocks tuloy. Growth assets, I should say. Ayan. So 30, 20, and then 10. Moderate pala to, no? Moderate. So, moderate and then growth. So, nagkakaiba-iba lang sila sa bigat. Kung makikita ninyo, no, these are just basic assets. Napakarami pa nating pwedeng pagpilian. Especially right now, in the era of technology, we have so much to choose from derivatives or commodities, from cryptocurrencies to ETFs or yung mga available funds online na pwede mong bilhin na, kumbaga, pag Pasko, bumibili ka ng naka-basket na mga goods, di ba? Kasi mas madaling bumili kapag ka naka-basket na, isang bilihan na lang. So, ganun din yung idea ng ETFs kasi, no? Anyway, we're gonna talk about that on a separate lecture probably. So, there are a lot of options. So, hindi lang ito. This is just a template. This is just major asset allocation. dun sa inyong gagawing requirement na aking i-announce, it doesn't have to be as short like this. Pwede pa kayo mag-isip ng iba pa if based on your own research. Okay? So, next na po tayo. Dito sa, balik tayo, ngayong tapos na tayo dito sa ating, ano ba tawag dito? We have already discussed the different types of investors. Now, we go back to the planning stage and pag-usapan natin ulit yung investment policy statement. So, basically, an IPS is just a written agreement. It serves as the contract between the portfolio manager and the investor. So, isa po siyang kontrata sa madaling salita. It's just a written agreement between the investment manager or company and the investor. It is a picture of realistic expectations, as I have mentioned a while ago, from the acronym SMART. It should be realistic expectations and the goals, objectives, whatever, and constraints of the risk profile and the risk profile of the investor. So in short, lahat ng na-mention natin under the planning stage is included in the IPS. And again, the end product is the strategic asset allocation. At yun ay, kumbaga, it is formally written at kumbaga wala nang bawian kasi nag-agree ka sa akin na ito yung gagawin nating asset allocation for your investment. Okay? So, components, ano ba yung makikita sa IPS? First is the description of the client, statement of purpose, statement and duties and responsibilities of the investment manager, custodian of assets, and the client. Procedures to update the IPS, and investment objectives derived from communications with the client. Meron pa ba? Investment constraints, investment guidelines, evaluation of performance, and appendices. So, yan ang makikita sa IPS. If you're going to sign up with Manulife, PruLife UK, or Sun Life, ang unang ibibigay sa inyo is yung IPS. So, you have to keep that IPS with you because it's your proof that you have engaged with the investment company. Okay, so that's it for the IPS. Now, we move on to the next stage of the portfolio management process, which is the execution. Okay, actually, yung planning stage is more on interview lang yun. Dito sa execution, ito talaga yung pinakamadugo because this is where the specific assets are selected. Ito yung palaging tinatanong sa akin ng mga kaibigan at ng mga estudyante ko, ma'am, saan ba pwedeng maganda mag-invest? Well, sabi ko nga, it takes an entire semester to answer that question. Napakahirap sagutin because it entails a rigorous process. My answer last 2016 is no longer the same answer now that it's 2021. Because ideal stocks vary depends on the performance of the firms. So probably, okay siya ng 2016, but ngayong 2021, it's a different story. That's why, it's a continuous process. Portfolio management is a continuous process. Aside from, nag-iiba-iba talaga yung goals ng investor, yung mga stocks na pinipili mo sa loob ng portfolio mo ay nag-iiba-iba rin naman. That's why you have to continuously see the performance of these firms that you are selecting. So, hindi lang firms, pati yung uri ng asset na pinipili mo, kailangan angkop sa panahon, angkop sa pangangailangan ng investor mo. Okay, so again, the execution step is the most crucial step in the investment portfolio process. Okay, in the investment portfolio management process. Why? Because this is where the top-down analysis happens. And this top-down analysis is a separate chapter that we would be discussing. But in a nutshell, it's an examination or it's really a research. it's a research of the current economic condition of a specific country. So if you're planning to invest in a foreign firm, ano, or in a foreign country, you have to first look at the top-down analysis before ka mag-decide if this stock or if this asset is worth investing in. Okay, so the top-down analysis is looking into a bigger picture to the smallest picture. Kaya it's an inverted triangle, ano? From the biggest picture to the smallest, which is, kung titignan natin, merong macroeconomic and political outlook. So, pag sinabi kasi nating macro, kabuuan, micro is a smaller version, ano? So, merong nakasulat pa dito, no, country-specific factors such as socio-political developments, population statistics, real economy, monetary, and fiscal policies. That's why you have actually public finance, ano? Public finance is more on fiscal policies kasi kasama talaga yan when it comes to identifying the profitability or the viability of investments in the future. At kaya meron din naman kayong micro tsaka macroeconomic subject kasi kailangan nyo ring malaman para saan ba yung tinatawag nating balance of payment, etc. etc. Ano? Okay, sabi sa inyo, it's a culmination of all business ad subjects. Andito na sa portfolio management subject natin. Okay, next we have the sector-specific factors. Later, pag-uusapan natin ano ba yung sectors na yan, ano? But anyway, again, this is another chapter that we would be talking about, no? Yung tinatawag nating company and industry analysis, dito natin pag-uusapan. And then finally, dun sa stock selection, quantitative and qualitative factors. For this area, ito na yung pinaka-end product or end goal ng ating subject, that is to come up with ano ba yung mga stocks na talagang ideally pwede nating piliin right now. Like if we're going to invest right now, which stocks would be the most valuable stocks that we can really, in real time invest in at the moment. Okay? So, later on in this subject, ito yung mga, actually ito na yung summary Summary na yata ito ng course natin, itong top-down analysis. Kaya dun sa mga nagtatanong, ma'am, saan ba maganda mag-invest? You have to first do or execute this top-down analysis. Okay? Just so we can identify the most attractive asset classes and eventually have a selection of particular stocks, specific stocks. Okay? So, kung makikita nyo, quantitative factors daw, yes, oo. Ito yung pinag-aralan natin sa FinMan 2A, which is more on financial reporting analysis. So, ang tawag dun is quantitative analysis. But this time, we're going to also have qualitative analysis as we go on dun sa, I think i-discuss natin yun dun sa company, tsaka industry analysis. Ayun, okay. Alright? Next, eto na. Ito, tapos na nating pag-usapan to dun sa mga ating previous videos, but let me just reiterate now that the major asset classes, as we've shown kanina dun sa strategic asset allocation, are this, no? We have cash. Yes, kasama po yung cash. It's the most liquid. Most liquid asset. Fixed income securities. Dapat alam niyo na yan by now. Publicly traded equities. Alright, so when we say publicly traded equities, these are stocks that are available in the stock exchanges. The reason why they are called public, it's because anyone can buy these securities, which is the opposite of private equity. Only selected people can invest in private equities. And then we have hedge funds. Ito ang pinaka-hot topic for the past few weeks ng 2021, no? Yung hedge funds. These are highly sophisticated, highly aggressive funds that not regular investors can afford, because these are really expensive funds that only the wealthy and the billionaires can afford. So since high risk, alam nyo na, napakataas din naman ng potential returns that they can get from it. Okay? And then we have real estate, commodities, and other real assets, such as equipment, building, warehouses, and the likes. So under execution steps, and under execution step pa rin, ano, ito yung mga decision na kailangang pag-isipan, i-research ng mga portfolio managers, ng mga fund managers, kung saan dadalhin yung investment ng isang client. Okay, just to give you somehow a picture of what we call yung risk and return ng ating mga major asset classes, ano. As you can see, where's my mouse? Okay. Pababa po. Ito ano. So, alam natin, the higher the risk, the higher the reward. The reason kung bakit napakataas ng average annual return ng mga small cap stocks is because they are just starting. Nagsisimula pa lang. Ibig sabihin pa usbong pa lang. So, dahil high risk itong mga small cap stocks, napakataas din ng kanilang average annual return. So, large cap stocks are considered as mas established, mas stable. So, mas stable, pero sakto lang, nasa gitna yung kanyang return. Hindi masyadong mataas at hindi rin masyadong mababa, pero highly stable. Kasi nga, large cap stocks na. And then we have long-term corporate bonds. We know when we say bonds, fixed income, hindi masyadong mataas yung return at hindi rin masyadong mababa, nasa gitna lang. But since kahit yung bonds naman ay mga safe investment, meron pa ring risk na kaakibat ang bonds, simply because you'll never know if a company can really stay afloat and survive in uncertain times like this pandemic that we're experiencing, ano? So, meron pa ring risk. Kaya mas mataas pa rin ang return. Then we have treasury bonds, and we know pag sinabi nating treasury bonds, these are really safe investments since they are coming from the government. And then treasury bills, and of course, inflation. Right now, ang inflation rate ng Pilipinas ay tumaas na naman because of the unstable prices po ng ating mga major commodities such as meat, ano? At yun ay naka-apekto talaga sa consumer spending ng mga tao. Okay, anyway, pinakita ko lang to just simply because I want you to have an idea dun sa tinatawag nating maximization of return at a given risk. Okay, we will talk more of this risk and return on the chapter risk and return. Okay, mas pag-uusapan pa natin at mas maiintindihan nyo itong konsepto ng interest or yield, I should say. Okay, yield ng ating mga different asset classes. So, still under execution step, no? If meron tayong top-down, meron tayong bottoms-up. Okay? Portfolio managers may attempt to identify the most attractive securities within the asset classes. So, kung kanina, pinag-uusapan natin asset class, ano? The purpose of the top-down analysis is to identify the most attractive asset classes. So, this time, within the asset classes naman tayo, ano? Yon. Okay. Ang pinaka-purpose na natin is to look for the undervalued stocks. Because as investors, we would look for cheap assets that we can buy right now that can have a higher gain in the future. So we're looking for undervalued securities right now that we can predict to increase in value in the next coming years. So you can only do that through through bottoms up security analysis. So qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis combined. Okay? So yun lang ang ibig niyang sabihin. Um, when we say qualitative analysis, we are talking about macroeconomic picture, industry or sector growth, global or regional opportunities, and then geopolitical landscape. Quantitative analysis is more on the financial statement analysis. Ano? So, yun lang naman ang ibig sabihin dito sa bottom-up security analysis. Okay. So, yun na pala ang ending ng execution step natin. This is easier said than done because the next coming chapters would be consisting of, eto nga, yung tinatawag nating fundamental analysis. We cannot do the execution step without undergoing all of this mentioned here. So, lahat ng yan, pag-uusapan natin in our next chapters. Kasi yan ang pinakamahirap gawin yung execution step. And so, for the last step, no, feedback is like the control mechanism of the investment portfolio management process. So, ito na yung tinatawag nating expectation versus reality. This is where the stage where the fund manager and the client or the investor would see if na-meet ba yung goal at the end of each year. Okay? So, under the feedback stage, investor circumstances will change, risk and return characteristics of asset classes will change, and the actual weights of the assets in the portfolio will change with asset prices. So, dito na yung mga changes na nangyayari if ever merong adjustments na kailangang gawin. So, the portfolio manager must monitor these changes and rebalance the portfolio periodically in response, adjusting the allocations to various asset classes back to their desired percentages. So, in short, when we read the word rebalance, no, ito yung sinasabi nating pagkakaroon ng adjustment and changes based on changes in the risk profile, changes in the objectives probably, at kung ano-ano pang changes based on yung 6 kanina dun sa 7 ba yun? Dun sa 7 under sa planning stage. So, any changes dun sa plans would be rebalanced in the feedback stage. So, the manager must measure portfolio performance and evaluate it relative to the return on the benchmark portfolio identified in the IPS. So, this portfolio performance evaluation will also be discussed in the latter part of our syllabus. If I'm not mistaken, it's actually the last chapter that we would be discussing, measuring portfolio performance. Okay, so pasok sa banga lahat, Actually, itong chapter 2 natin or itong portfolio construction discussion is a summary of everything that we will be discussing in the next chapters. So it will all make sense because they are interconnected with each other. And by the end of this semester, pwede na kayong magsimulang magtrabaho sa mga mga insurance companies because you already are an expert when it comes to portfolio management, investment portfolio management. Well, I hope so. Sana. Okay? So, pakita ko lang, yung overview ng ating pinag-usapan so far. It's summarized in this diagram, kung makikita nyo, this is the planning stage where you set investment objectives, and then the second one would be the execution step, which is to develop an investment strategy. And then this is still included in the execution step, which is to select an appropriate investment vehicle. And finally, dun sa feedback stage, yung tinatawag nating portfolio review. So, Yun. So, there you go. Again, it's easier said than done, but looking at it, no, parang ano naman, I think we can manage. We can manage to, how do you call this? Like, comprehend the things that we're going to do for the next coming weeks. Ito na yun. Itong kahon na to na nakikita ninyo would be the summary of everything na paghihirapan natin for the next semester. So if you're planning to work in an investment bank, you're planning to work in any financial institutions, this is going to be an advantage for you if you would really get the grasp of everything that we will be uh, discussing and what we're going to create. Kasi dito sa subject na to, hindi lang tayo basta magre-research tayo ay gagawa. Okay? We're going to create an output that you would be proud of out of this management process or the portfolio management process that we are talking about. So, hindi masasayang itong mga ginugol nyo na oras na inaaral talaga itong subject natin. So, going on and moving forward, let's talk about, this is a, ano ba? It's kind of a complex, sabihin na natin, strategic asset allocation. Again, ginamit or kinuha ko itong template na ito sa CFA Reviewer. So, ito yung kanyang parang pinupropose na complex strategic asset allocation where kung makikita nyo, 0% yung cash because it's allocated on a balance, ano siya eh. Parang sabihin na natin merong aggressive, merong high alpha. And it's a combination of almost the typical asset class used in the US. So, tingnan lang natin, meron tayong large cap equities, small or mid cap equities. Kung makikita nyo, mas malaki yung weight niya sa large cap because this is a more stable selection as compared to small or mid cap equities. And then meron din siyang international equities, emerging market equities, US bonds, global bonds, high yield bonds. Alam natin pag high yield, no, mas mataas ang tawag dito, mga junk bonds, ano? Emerging market debt, inflation-protected bonds, wow. And then we also have real estate, a portion of hedge funds, which is 5%, private equity. Pag private equity, again, mas expensive, kaya nga 2% lang ito. And then 0% sa commodities. Siguro kasi itong template na to is not for the kumbaga highly aggressive kasi 0%. Ang commodities kasi, high risk kasi, no? Madali siyang i-trade pero high risk. And then, tactical asset allocation and others, a total of 100%. So, this is an example of a more complex portfolio. So, pag ginawa natin yan into a pie chart, madali na lang gawin yan sa Excel. I will be showing you how to create a pie chart in the next coming videos. But if you already know how, walang problema. You just simply actually highlight these two columns and then insert ka lang ng pie graph and then mag-create na siya ng pie graph on its own. Okay? So, ganito yung itsura. Pie chart ang kalalabasan. If you input this detail or data in the Excel sheet, you may want to try to do it later after the video. It's gonna look like this. Anyway, so these are sample asset allocation for aggressive, moderately aggressive, moderately conservative, and conservative. Okay. So kung titignan nyo, dito sa conservative, kung kanina ang proposed asset allocation dun sa ating risk profile questionnaire ay 90% income, 10% growth, dito naman mas detailed lang ng konti. So 60% bonds, 20% short-term investment. So when we say short-term investment, we are talking of money market instruments. And then 15% large cap US stock. Pag sinabi nating large cap, ibig sabihin established na mga firms na yan. And then, so, relatively safe pa rin. And then, 5% international stock. Okay? So, masasabi natin conservative pa rin yung portfolio na yan simply because malaking weight nung kanyang portfolio ay bonds or income. So, tumutugma pa rin dun sa description natin ng conservative investor dun sa isang template natin kanina. So, kung titignan mo, 60 and 20% safe investment, 80%, and then 20% growth assets. So, kung titignan natin, no, again, ulitin ko, this is 60% income, 20% short-term investment. So, safe, 80% safe investment, only 20% na growth investment. And then, kung titingnan natin itong moderate, okay, kung titingnan natin, mas, again, iba na naman yung itsura ng weights niya. 40% bonds, so relatively, mas malaki pa rin, ano? 35% large cap, ibig sabihin ng large cap, again, highly established stocks. So, 20% pa rin yung sa growth, at 15% international stock, 5% mid cap, 5% small stock. Okay. So, ang pinagkaiba niya, again, pag sa moderate kasi nasa gitna, katamtaman na safe, katamtaman na growth, and then maliit na portion na high risk. So, mas mangingibabaw pa rin yung safe investments as compared to the high-risk investment. And then, kung titignan natin yung aggressive, nagkakaiba-iba lang siya dun sa, kung dito, meron ka pang bonds, dito sa aggressive, wala ka ng safe investments. These are all high-risk investments, nagkakaiba-iba lang sa weight. So, tignan natin, 40% international stock, 45% large cap stocks, 10% small cap, 5% mid cap US stock. So again, if you're going to create your asset allocation, you have to be particular with the weights and you have to be particular with the asset selection. Alright? Okay, malinaw po tayo ha. So habang nag-iiba yung risk profile, nag-iiba yung asset selection at nag-iiba rin yung weights. Right. And another one, ito naman based on age. Like I said kanina, habang nag-iiba yung age ng isang tao, nag-iiba yung priorities, nag-iiba rin yung kanyang risk appetite. So if you are age 20 to 35%, pansinin nyo to ha, 80% equities, 20% fixed income and real estate. Kasi habang mas bata ka, mas aggressive ka. Pero kapag umabot ka na ng 60 and above, nasa retiring age na, pansinin niyo yung naging asset allocation niya, 80% na lang, 80% fixed income, 20% na lang yung high risk. Okay, so it's the opposite of each. Pero kapag ka nasa gitna, moderate, 36 to 50, at least kalahati pa, no? Parang ito lang, 51 to 60, kalahati pa rin siya. Right, so I hope you are observing all of these allocations that I am showing to you guys because you will be creating one in your next requirement. Alright? Now, let's move on to mutual funds. Okay, ito, na-discuss ko na to dun sa ating unang video, but let me just show this illustrations with you guys, the different types of mutual funds. These are all available in the Philippines, by the way. And now that you know what strategic allocations are, pag-usapan natin yung different types of mutual funds. Kasi pag sinabi nating mutual funds, these are collection of, this is actually a managed fund. Ibig sabihin, there is a professional na nagmamanage ng fund na yon. What you're going to do is just subscribe. So, you don't have to think of anything else. Hindi mo na siya kailangan problemahin kasi meron ng mamumroblema nung strategic asset allocation, mamumroblema ng research, top-down analysis, bottom-down analysis, para sa'yo, hindi na ikaw ang gagawa kasi meron ng expert who will do the dirty job for you. Okay? So, the types of mutual funds are typically equity, balance, fixed income, and money market. Okay? Now that you understand these definitions of what equity, what fixed income, and money market is, you would understand kung bakit nakakategorize tong mga mutual funds in this way. So when we say equity fund, 75 to 90% invested in stocks. Ibig sabihin yung portfolio na ito ay it consists of majority of equity. When we say balance funds, it's 100% in fixed income securities. Okay. Pero pinagkaiba niya dito sa, it's supposed to be ano, no? Oh, wait lang. Okay, bakit same na same ang kanyang, same na same, oh. Balance at saka, ang alam ko kasi sa balance funds is hati siya sa equity at hati rin sa fixed income. Okay? Pag fixed income, 100%. So, I'm not sure if this is a ngayon ko lang nakita at nabasa. But it's supposed to be 50% or sabihin na natin 60% equity, 40% fixed income. That's the definition of balance funds. And then fixed income, 100% fixed income securities. And then money market is 100% in short-term fixed income securities. At kung mapapansin nyo, no, nagkakaiba-iba talaga sila in terms of rate of return, type of investor, and then time horizon. So here is a structure of other types of mutual funds aside from the basic or the major types. So meron tayong tinatawag na equity, alam nyo na yan, money market, hybrid, debt, gilt funds, and others. So sa others, meron tayong commodity funds, real estate funds, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, ETFs, exchange traded funds that you can buy on organized exchanges such as the PSE. So, meron na kayong mabibiling ETFs sa PSE natin. Nag-iisa pa lang siya at makikita nyo yun sa ating discussion under overview of equity securities sa kabilang subject natin. And then funds of funds. And then we also have what we call sector funds. All right? Mas mapag-uusapan pa natin to sa kabilang klase natin, yung sector funds. So, pakihintay na lang po. Ayoko na siyang i-discuss as a whole, but what I want to show you guys is there are other types of mutual funds. But then again, ito yung pinaka-common. Okay, now I would want to show to you guys yung top 10 mutual funds in the Philippines just in case you would be interested in subscribing or investing to mutual funds in the future. Kasi nga naman, hindi nyo na kailangang mamroblema sa mga investments nyo kasi meron nang gagawa nun for you guys. What you're going to do is just insert funds in the mutual funds on a regular basis. And then they are going to do the work for you. So, noong 2019, as you can see, nakasulat na dito yung 1-year return. 12.24%. Just to give you an idea, gaano kataas itong 12.24%. If you're going to put your money in the bank, no, it's just gonna earn 0.75%, a maximum of 1.25%. So, if you're looking for a place where you can grow your money to 12.24% without risking too much, unlike kunwari magbi-business ka, no? If you're going to put your money in a franchise or in a business or in real estate, hindi mo makukuha yung 12.24%. By the way, this is still subject to tax, ha? Baka kasi iniisip nyo buong buo. This is still subject to tax. But, with this amount of return or with this rate of return, napakataas na, hindi na masama. Diba? So, if you're looking for an option or an alternative, mutual funds will be the answer for you guys. So we have PhilAm Bond Fund, PhilAm Dollar Bond Fund, Atram Alpha Opportunity Fund, which is a stock fund. By the way, na-categorize naman kung anong klase siya, no? So, the first two are bond funds and then followed by a stock fund. Coco Life Dollar Fund, which is balance funds. Sun Life Bond Fund. Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Abundance Fund, also a bond fund. Sun Life Prosperity GS Fund. PAMI Horizon Fund, PhilAm Fund, and Phil Equity Peso Bond. So, makikita nyo, no? You cannot get a safe investment with this kind of return. Okay? Pero, of course, if you're going to invest in a single stock, yes, mas mataas ang return na pwede mong makuha, pero napakataas din ng risk na kaakibat nito. So, unlike individual stock investment, pag mutual funds kasi, it's pretty much well-researched for you. Hindi mo na kailangang pang mag-mini-mini mo. Sila na ang maghahanap ng kaakibat na magandang stock selection or security selection for you. Okay? And then, in terms of 2020 naman, tingnan natin kung ano ang napakataas naman nito, 21.75. Ito rin, kita mo na, 12.24. This one is an equity. Okay. Kasi this one is a bond fund, kaya 12.24%. This one is an equity. It's an equity fund, that's why it has a higher return, which is 21.75%. O, diba? Napakalaki. Laki ng value, ano? Pero remember, guys, it also has a possibility na magkaroon ng losses. Kaya, napakataas din ng return. And, kung titignan nyo, it's in dollar. Siyempre, kapag ka dollar yan, mas volatile ang dollar, alam mo na, mas mataas talaga ang return. So, it's up to you kung paano mo babalansehin yung risk and return sa iyong decision making. And then, Atram Asia Plus, Equity Fund also. Sun Life, this is consistent, no? Yung Sun Life talaga very consistent na nasa top 10 talaga. Again, it's a dollar fund, pero balance. Ano? Next, PAMI Asia Balance Fund. We also have, by the way, dahil napaka-cheap ng dollar ngayon, yung palitan ng peso sa dollar, napakaraming nag-i-invest sa dollar ngayon. So, might as well, if you might consider investing in a dollar account in the future, why not? No? Kasi mas mataas talaga yung return. And then we have also Soldivo Bond Fund, which is in peso. Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Wellspring Fund. Atram Dynamic Allocation Fund. Atram Total Return Dollar Bond Fund. PhilAm Bond Fund. And Phil Equity Peso Bond Fund. So, kinuha ko tong mga data na to with different sources, just so that I can have a kumbaga parang contrast and comparison among other. Pero kung titingnan natin, di naman ganun nagkakalayo. But then again, nagkakaiba yung ating return kasi remember last year nagkaroon tayo ng last year nag-start yung pandemic, so yung mga returns din natin bumaba, as kung makikita ninyo dito 9, 8%, 7%, bumaba ng 5, 6, 8% yung returns for last year. But then again, hindi na masama kasi meron pa ring return in spite of the pandemic. So if you are one of those few people who invested continuously last year, meron pa ring return or gains na record dun sa iyong portfolio. Kaya ko isinama tong mutual funds because actually yung ginagawa nating portfolio management process is similar to what they do in mutual funds company. They pull together investments in a single fund. At ang tawag doon sa prosesong 'yon is paggawa ng portfolio. So walang pinagkaiba ang pag-create ng mutual funds sa konsepto ng portfolio management process. So that's it for our video lecture for the topic construction of a investment portfolio. So just ano ba? I will be posting your next requirement for this subject, no? Kaakibat nung pinapagawa kong risk profile. So maraming salamat for finishing this video. Again, I hope you've learned so much from this episode. And that's it. I'll see you on the next